You are listening to From Embers, a weekly show on CFRC 101.9 FM about anarchist and anti-authoritarian ideas and practice. We are broadcasting from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples on land that has come to be called Kingston, Ontario, Canada, because of the thievery and brutality of the Canadian state and its empire-loving parents. From Embers is about fires, some real and some metaphorical. Fires started generations ago and tended to over the years. Little sparks all across this territory that we hope will grow, spread, and engulf the thieving state called Canada and the capitalist system that has plagued this land since the fur trade. Hello, welcome to From Embers. We recently took almost a whole year off from recording this show, and there are so many amazing struggles that we have missed out on talking about during that time. One of those is a land reclamation on the edge of the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve near Caledonia, Ontario. This week marks the one-year anniversary of the camp known as 1492 Landback Lane, which was reclaimed last July in response to plans to develop a subdivision on Six Nations territory. The Six Nations Reserve is the largest reserve in so-called Canada by population and sits in the midst of one of the most densely populated regions in the country. The reserve has shrunk drastically from the land tract originally promised to the Haudenosaunee after the American Revolutionary War, all as settler development in what is now known as Southern Ontario has continued to sprawl. Six Nations people have stood up to defend their territory from development on numerous occasions, including a now famous standoff in 2006 that led to the reclamation of the site known as Ganstaden, or the Protected Place, and the cancellation of the Douglas Creek Estates subdivision project. Last week, I got a chance to talk to camp spokesperson Skyler Williams about this past year's land reclamation, the recent announcement that the McKenzie Meadows subdivision has also been cancelled by its developer, and what's next for the ongoing land reclamation at Landback Lane.
Hello, my name is Skyler Williams. I'm a Mohawk from Six Nations and have been the spokesperson for 1492 Landback Lane for the last year now.
Okay. We have actually a bunch of listeners who are outside of the region and might not know too much about your context there. Can you tell us a little bit about Six Nations and how it came to exist as it does?
There's a lot of history here at Six Nations, and I mean, going back to the Revolutionary War and the Americans and the British, and Six Nations people allied with the Crown, and for doing so, the Six Nations people were allotted a tract of land along the Grand River, 6 miles on either side of that river from the mouth to its source. And so Grand River is in southern Ontario. It starts in town of Dundalk in the north, which is kind of northwest of Toronto, and goes down to almost the border by Fort Erie, Niagara area. And it flows into Lake Erie at a town called Port Maitland in the south. And so it is about 350 kilometers long, and so that 20 kilometer wide stretch of land from Dundalk to Port Maitland is quite significant, but also significant for another reason. The idea with Six Nations kind of being placed there was that the tensions between the British and the Americans hadn't quite eased as of yet, and it was a military stronghold because the Six Nations people were very fierce in battle, and were positioned by the British to be a day's ride from Fort Niagara or Fort Detroit or Fort York. And so there's the so 1784 there was a treaty signed with the British. There was not a treaty; it was a deed, the Haldimand Proclamation, which deeded the Six Nations that tract of land. And so when War of 1812 came about, there was a big push to get English settlement in Canada. And so the kind of leading up to the War of 1812, there was a big push, not only to come and fight for the crown, but also to, settle Indian country. And so as Six Nations people started to flood into what was lands that were granted to us, we started noticing a lot of white settlers had started to homestead along the banks of the Grand River. And so we immediately started petitioning to government and trying to, push those settlers on to, other lands. And government at the time, had made lots of, promises to get rid of these settlers. But because this War of 1812 was coming, it wasn't something that they were too keen on doing in too big a hurry. As things moved along, the tract became smaller and smaller and smaller. And so from 1812 to, the early 1900s, there was significant amount of encroachment on those lands. So the city of Kitchener and Dunnville, Brantford, Cambridge all started springing up along the banks of the river. And so those lands were squatted on and then resold once the Crown patenting land registry was starting in Canada. And so in the mid-1800s, 1850s era, there was all of that started to happen. And so Landback Lane, 1492 Landback Lane, was one of those spots. And so in 1848, a squatter came and seen a little spot of land that he liked along the creek, cleared the land of all the bush and started to farm there. There was a big push right around that time in the 1860s to have these squatters removed. But this particular squatter sold his rights to that land to the Nichols family. And the Nichols family farmed that land until 2003. And it just got passed down from father to son to father to son until, nobody kind of understood anymore that this land was just squatted on at one point. In 2003, it was sold to a local developer who started working to get bylaws changed. And in 2006, as a development was starting across the road from where we're at right now, Six Nations people came out in a huge way. And so this was the 2006 Caledonia reclamation and standoff that has seen Six Nations people occupy those lands at Ganastado for the last 15 years. And so now, directly across the road from that, last year when development started there, our people went there and we said absolutely no to development.
Yeah, can you just sort of walk us back to that point, pretty much exactly a year ago right now, and let us know quickly how you took control of that spot, what led to that moment, and how 1492 Landback Lane came to be?
So yeah, I was, and you know what, we've been quite deliberate in the choices that we've made around trying to keep everything as peaceful as we possibly can. And so the first day that we went in there was no different. July 19th, it was about dinner time. We made those choices because we knew that the developers, none of the workers were going to be there that day in the evening. And so we went and we set up a fire and put up some flags, and we sat down and we had dinner together. There was 30 of us that went in on the first day, and so that was kind of the choosing of that. And that spot, I mean, it is right on the border of what is now Six Nations Reserve number 40. It is it is the further pushing in and hemming in, if you will, of our community.
The mainstream media always makes a point when they're talking about this to mention that the elected band council at Six Nations at that point was supporting the development. Can you explain for folks what that means and why people chose to oppose it anyway?
So the elected council here at Six Nations, and it's no different in any First Nations community, Indigenous community across the country. Like the elected council here in Six Nations represents about 4% of our community. And so the last voter turnout, that's exactly what they had in terms of was 4% of the eligible voters. And so this idea that these developers can gain the and it's not even consent that they're asking for, and so they're coming and saying, here's a bag of money, we are going to develop this land, and so you can either say no to the money and we're going to develop it anyway, or you can take the money and we're going to develop. So like there's no choice for these developers to make here, or these band councils to take. And so there was no consultation with the hereditary council here, or any of the families of these nations within their community.
Will you spell out, just for listeners, what the difference is between band council and hereditary chiefs, and where your camp and the people there kind of fit into that question?
So yeah, and I mean, like for us, like our stance has always been one of unity. Colonization, man, it has really messed with a lot of our nations, and not just here at Six Nations, but like across all of Turtle Island. Like these elected systems that were enforced here in Six Nations in 1924 by gunpoint by the RCMP that outlawed the hereditary council, and so that they instigated a coup and installed a puppet government that was voted on by, I think, something like 60 people. I mean, Six Nations is a reserve of 20,000 people, like, and I think they had 60 or 70 people that came out to vote the very first election in 1924. And so, like, the hereditary council, which is kind of the more conservative estimates put it around 1,200 years old, and some of the more larger ones put it much, much, much older than that. And so, it is a participatory democracy, and one of the oldest, if not the oldest, in the entire world. And so it is certainly a means that we govern ourselves and still govern ourselves today.
Let's talk about the encampment. You've been there a year. What is life like from day to day at that spot at Lambeck Lane?
Oh, I mean, it's about family and friends, and being able to. These days, it's about planting and growing and being able to build tiny homes so that we can be sustainable and have our people on the land for the foreseeable future. Very early on, it was difficult. I mean, when just to give a little brief, like last year in a nutshell, like after we went in there, the police said that they were going to kind of let sleeping dogs lie, not move in and try and push us off the land. But this developer went and got a civil court order for an injunction to kind of strong-arm the police into moving on the camp. And so when that happened on August 5th, Six Nations people, like I said, Six Nations is a huge, huge population, and doesn't look too kindly on their people being shot at. And so when the OPP came in, they lined up 120 tactically armed OPP officers and rolled onto the camp. And as they got there, they said, if there's anybody that is willing to leave, you can leave right now and you won't be arrested. And so we went and told everybody what was going on, and so some of those people went to leave. One of those young ladies who was not from Six Nations went to leave, and when they got to the road, the one police officer picked her up and slammed her to the ground. And as all of us kind of stepped forward, say not to do that, shots started to ring out. And so you could hear the bullets whiz by our heads. We learned a few days later that they were rubber bullets. But, it's not an announcement that they make before they start shooting. It's not, hey, these are rubber bullets we're shooting. And, it was just starting to fire with what looked to everybody to be shotguns. And so it was quite the day. There was 9 of us arrested that day, including myself. As I got out of jail, 4 hours later, this woman come running up to me with a phone in her hand, and she stuck it right in my face. And I'll never forget it because I was trying to see who this person was that was talking to me, but she was showing me this live stream from a news outlet that was showing the fires and the roadblocks and the cops being pushed off the land, and so I just immediately said, take me back down there. I got to get back down there. And so I got a ride from this woman that I didn't know, and she took me back to the middle of everything, and all the roads, everything that was keeping us from being able to go back into Land Back Lane was now blocked and held by Six Nations people. We marched into Land Back Lane much like we did the very first day. We drove in the front door and peacefully as we did that very first day, and we started to rebuild our camp. And as soon as we were, back reestablished at the camp, we were, started to bring those barricades down. But then we started fighting the injunction. We fought the injunction. We presented evidence. We argued our case. I was named in the injunction, and so, but we didn't have any money, I guess, to be able to hire a lawyer. I mean, the lawyers to fight these civil cases is millions and millions of dollars, and so I'm quite lucky in my friends, and so we got some of my smartest friends together, and we decided to figure out how it is to litigate a injunction case. On October 22nd, the judge in Haldimand County, Ontario, barred me from any participation in my own defense, as well as struck every bit of evidence that we put forward to kind of explain why it is that we're there. And then at the court that day, we did a bit of media thing, and as the press conference was over, we made our way to what we call the back door, which is like the kind of the back trail to get into the camp. And as that happened, I drove up, and just as I got there, my wife had called and said, Skyler, you need to get to the back door right now. The cops are here. They're trying to arrest people. And so I said, I'm here. And as I got out of the car, not a second later, then my door closed, and the shots started to ring out again. And again, we found out days later that they were rubber bullets that they were firing. But one young man was shot in the back of the leg. Another guy was shot with a taser dart. But no arrests were made that day. But with the shots ringing out again and again, nobody knowing whether or not it was live rounds or rubber bullets or what it was, they Six Nations people came out in a just huge way again, and seeing 1,000 Six Nations people take to the streets, and that evening, that saw roads and railways and highways dug up all the way around the camp to make sure that the OPP were no longer going to be able to utilize these roads to be able to inflict any more violence on the group of people that were peacefully occupying their lands.
Get your Armageddon now. Bye, bye, baby, bye, bye. Bye, bye, baby, bye, bye. Oh, when that sun sinks down now, I'm burning to the ground, my little warship. My dirty warship. How much longer till we end this misery? Behind that angel's eyes, lots of stormy skies. I'm in a warship. Bye, bye, baby, bye, bye. Bye, bye, baby, bye, bye. Bye, bye, baby, bye, bye. Just like a burning fire, I can't get no sleep. Just like a burning fire, well, I've been way too deep. My little warship, my bloody warship, my little warship, my bloody warship, stuck in a warship.
You are listening to From Embers on CFRC 101.9 FM, or you might be listening to the podcast edition of From Embers on your smartphone. If you want to hear more like this interview with Skyler Williams of 1492 Landback Lane, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast. There you'll find all of our past episodes, including an interview with a settler anarchist who spent time at the 2006 land reclamation at Six Nations, as well as an episode about the Oka crisis and its legacy, which I think also provides important context for today's show. All of the music on today's episode is by artists who have performed at one time or another at the camp at Landback Lane. You just heard Six Nations singer-songwriter Derek Miller with Rorschach, and the beat that you keep hearing along with my voice is by A Tribe Called Red. Here's the rest of that interview with Skyler Williams. Six Nations it's in such a dense area. It's surrounded by so much sprawling colonial development. And this is absolutely not the first time people there have had to defend their land, even specifically against subdivision development. Can you speak a bit to what is different or not now in like 2020, 2021 versus years ago?
Yeah, I was a part of the 2006 reclamation, actually. I spent a year in the bush there in a tent, and then 7 months in jail for that particular tract of land that is still occupied by our people. And what is different this time, I think there are a lot of similarities. The fact that, it is, Six Nations people driven, and it is, like these amazing people that, continue to hold it down, the women of our community that, continue to, guide that struggle in the way that they do. It really is a gift to be from a community like Six Nations that has these just absolutely amazingly strong women behind us. In 2006, we had some really hard right-wing folks like Gary McHale and his cohort continued to come and antagonize and stir up trouble, whereas we haven't had that this time. We've really done everything possible to make ourselves as open as possible, that we can have those discussions with people that may disagree with us, but also there's a growing bit of solidarity with non-Native communities, not just here, but across the country. Like, it's been an absolutely amazing turn to see, like those rallies be in support of us as opposed to against us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been like a pretty big couple of years for, I think, both for like land defense and also for settlers kind of reckoning with Canadian history in various ways. Do you have a lot of supporters showing up here and there? Like, have you seen a lot of people come through like to show their support for that, or is it sort of the same?
Absolutely. You know what? Last on July 1st, we actually got some news that the developer was going to be repaying all of the down payments that the would-be homebuyers had made, and so yeah, to see the celebration that we had that Saturday, we've seen people from all over the place that had made donations, had come down, had helped build things, had helped to organize events, like had really been the spearhead of pushing this along to make sure that, that 360 days, that we're still there, that after 360 days of us on the land, like, our people are still there. And so this coming weekend, we're going to be having, more people again for the 1-year anniversary on July 19th. And so, like, that sees, like, the kind of who's who of musicians and artists from across Turtle Island here come out, and some of which were actually arrested for coming down last summer, and playing their music for us. And so to see them guys back after having, like, there was another big win in court 2 days ago that seen some 30 people have their charges withdrawn. This is after, 9 months of going to court, being on these conditions to not attend that land back lake. And so, like, it's just an absolutely ridiculous sentiment that, you can put down a movement just simply by arresting everybody with no intention of proceeding with any charges against them, but keeping them on conditions for some of those people almost a year. And so it is just ridiculous that this is how we try and control people.
Yeah, and we've seen that, like, several times with various different movements too, how sometimes that process itself is the punishment. Like, they never intended to charge people or convict them of any crime. It's just about holding them up in court while things continue. Do you ever feel like it's overwhelming, like there's, like, too many supporters coming through, or, like, more people than you know what to do with, trying to lend their support, come out, that kind of stuff?
No, absolutely not. No, it is an absolute gift to be able to have the friends that we have, and it is a beautiful thing, and would like to extend that invitation to anybody that would like to come and visit us. Like, we do our best to be as open a community as we can be.
There was a major raid, like, just a month in, as you mentioned earlier, and I think a lot of folks sort of felt like, oh wow, like, this is going to be it from the outside. But a year later, you guys are still there. To what do you credit that longevity? Like, how have you lasted so long?
I think it is that openness that we just talked about. Is that being able to be welcoming to folks that want to come down, and like. The support that we've had from Six Nations in general, like, it is like the hereditary chiefs have supported us when they won the elected council here, and come out with some tentative support, and it is I really can't say enough about how grateful I am for that community that I come from.
You guys aren't the only people really across so-called Canada who've been standing up, defending your land this year and the year before. Are there connections between people there and, like, people out west, people out east, people in other places who've also been fighting for their own land in the last couple of years?
You know what? We would not be able to make these struggles real for Canada or for their individual provinces if we weren't able to stand together. And so it is an absolute gift to be able to have the friends and brothers and sisters that we have from Mi'kmaq folks that were fighting for their right to fish for lobster, Kitigan Zibi folks that, made their stands for the Moose Moratorium, Inuit folks up north that were fighting there, the Wet'suwet'en folks, and people from all of these communities have made their way to Six Nations to stand beside us and to be able to make the point clear that we are united across the country. And so just going to one of our communities and resting a dozen people here and there, and certainly here in Six Nations where they spent $20 million to do so. We aren't going to lay down, and if you go to wherever it's going to disrupt things across the country.
Yeah, and I think there really is that growing sense too that like if they attack people in one place, there's really going to be like this wave of stuff across the whole territory. Like people are going to fight back everywhere, which is like I find that really inspiring. At least I don't know about you guys there. You kind of already gave this away, but last week the developer announced that they're basically giving up on the build. Does that count as a major victory for you guys?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't count as a major victory. I mean, these are incremental wins.
Sure.
The generational struggle, right? Like this is a struggle that began, many years ago, and we are just carrying on in the footsteps of those people that made these stands before us. My parents made these stands, my grandparents, and their parents before them, and so it is. There's no court or bit of legislation that is going to, there's going to be some judge someday that's going to stand up and say, all right, everybody, we messed up. Everybody back on the boats. We got to go back to Europe. And so it's, we're just passing down to our children the ability to at least have an argument. Because if we do nothing, if we stand by and let these massive developments roll through, it takes their ability to even be able to say no. And so it's I'm really, really grateful, for my parents that made these stands and my grandparents before them. And so it's this connection to land is something for us that is near and dear to all of us. And we've never, when we're not saying we're going up and down the Grand River evicting people from their homes that maybe have been passed down from father to son and mother to daughter. Like this isn't what we're about. What we're about is saying that we would like the ability to be able to grow and thrive. Like every other big city, every other small town across the country has had the ability to grow and thrive as communities. The only ones that have not are reserves. They're the only ones that continue to shrink. And so for us, we want to be able to, certainly while we're talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, right now we're talking about residential school and the survivors of those schools, the 60s scoop, the Millennium scoop, like all of these children that were stolen from our communities. We want to be able to invite those brothers and sisters home to their families. But we need to be able to have space to be able to do that. And so for Six Nations, which has a booming population, whose borders continue to shrink, like we don't have that ability to shrink anymore without having to push those community members into surrounding cities. And so all we want is the same thing that everybody else has had, is that ability to grow and thrive as communities. And so this idea that covering everything in concrete and asphalt in the name of progress is not how folks at Six Nations live. And I think this is true of Indigenous communities across the country, is that, we leave something for the deer and the wild turkeys and the foxes and the, there needs to be some relative harmony with what's going on around us and with Mother Earth. And so this is how you come to my house, 3/4 of my property is just wild bush. This is where we tap maple trees. This is where, I teach my children to hunt and trap. This is how we do things. And so for us to be forced to cover everything in concrete and asphalt because that's the only way that we can keep members of our community within our communities. Like, this is an absolutely infuriating idea to all of us.
Do you think that a moment like this, where there is like this small gain, like this developer is pulling out, do you think that gives people hope for a different future there? Like, is there anything that to be gained from a small victory like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those small victories like we had in '06, like those small victories are very, very important to be able to show that next generation that wants to make these stands that like, when you fight, we can win. Mm-hmm. It needs to be done together, and it needs to be done in the name of unity, and it needs to be for everybody.
Does it change what you'll do next at all? Like, now that that particular subdivision seems pretty unlikely to happen right away, at least. Like, does the camp stay as it has been? Is there anything that's going to change moving forward because of that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we're going to continue to grow there, and our community will utilize those lands as we see fit. And so this idea that we're simply borrowing these lands from those future generations. And so those my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids, like, they will decide what it is we utilize those lands for. And so if we're going to have that opportunity to be able to build there and make sure that Nation's people are on those lands for the foreseeable future.
Got any big hopes or plans for the coming months or years out there? Anything in particular that you're looking forward to?
Like when these massive developments, like this particular development is 1,400 homes. So when these developments start and they bulldoze down everything that is beautiful about Mother Earth, like every shrub, every tree, every blade of grass has been bulldozed over. And so to see this year, our gardens, to see this year, trees being planted, to be able to witness the community come together in the way that it did, like, to be able to continue to build on that and keep pushing to see government come to the table in a real way, to be able to settle these in a peaceful way that doesn't see our people criminalized in the way that we have been.
There are people who have like pretty substantial charges from some of the police repression that has happened there. Is there anything that's happening with that stuff in the courts or outside of it to support those folks? I know you yourself have also been like a huge target for the cops, so if you want to speak to that as well, you can.
Actually, you know what? We had a bit of a victory there as well. Like over this, I think it was 2 days ago, we had, lots of people had their charges withdrawn, but folks like myself that aren't quite so lucky in that regard, and so we're pushing ahead with that. There's no guilty plea that I'm looking to take, so we'll see a trial here, and I'm guessing somewhere in the next year.
And you folks are looking forward to a celebration, I think, this weekend, right? What else is coming? What else is coming up? What do you have on deck for in terms of like activities or things that you want to do next now that this development is canceled?
So moving forward, it's this weekend is going to be the big anniversary party. Again, we're going to see Logan Staats and Derek Miller and all these guys come out and play for us. There's the lacrosse game on Monday on July 19th, but on July 17th there's all the bands are coming out. July 19th will be lacrosse game and social, like traditional social and potluck. But moving forward at the camp, it's about building, making it sustainable. So things like solar panels and batteries, making sure that everybody's got power in their tiny homes, building a kitchen and showers, and making sure we've got running water. All of those kind of basic necessities of being able to stay on the land sustainably for the foreseeable future.
What are some of the things that people there particularly need to be able to stay there that you think people from the outside could perhaps help with?
Until everything kind of really gets built around the kitchen and that kind of stuff. But I mean, solar stuff is always super important, kind of the big ticket items. But being able to the folks that bring, that come down with, a hot plate of food for, the 20 or 30 people that are there. Like these are just absolutely amazing gifts that people continue after an entire year continue to do. Come down and share stories and laughs and really be able to be able to stay on the land for as long as we have.
Do you have concerns that less people will come out now that the developer has claimed the project is canceled?
No, I mean, in terms of like day-to-day functioning of the camp, like our people are living there day in and day. So as long as Six Nations people continue to utilize those lands, like I think we are are gifted to be able to, that ability to be able to stay there for as long as we need to.
If people are listening and they feel inspired by this story or by what you're saying, how can they help out or find out more about what's going on there?
You know what? Reach out. Follow us. There's Twitter and Facebook groups and stuff like that. Send us a message, drop us a line, and somebody will get back to you and tell you how to get to us. And yeah, we try and be as welcoming as possible to everybody, and so whatever we can do to help people to understand just what it is that we're doing there is really, really important to us.
We usually play a couple songs on the show along with the interviews. Is there any music that you can suggest that you think would go particularly well with your words that we could play? You know what?
Like all the stuff, from, Derek Miller and Logan Staats, like those guys have been doing a lot for us. Tribe Called Red has been out. Halluci Nation. Tom Wilson, Jace Martin, like all of these guys, like are just absolutely phenomenal people that continue to lift us up and push us along. And so it's some music from some of them.
I found a low you've never seen. I wish I never saw coming. Hit me in waves just like the sea. I wish I never started running away. But I keep searching till it starts burning. 'Cause when it hurts, at least I know I'm learning. Don't forget me in the fire. Don't you let me lose the flame. So protect me from desire. I get lost in the fear of the flame, of the flame, of the flame. I lost a high I can't explain. I wish I had seen it coming. Give me a heart that I can tame. Wish I wasn't always running away. So I keep searching till it starts burning. 'Cause when it hurts, at least I know I'm learning. Don't forget me in the fire. Don't you let me lose the flame. So protect me from desire. I get lost in the fear of the flame, 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 of the flame. Don't give up and don't give in. You gotta lose before you win. So don't give up and don't give in. You gotta lose before you win. Don't forget me in the fire. Don't you let me lose the flame. So protect me from desire. I get lost in the fear of the flame, of the flame, of the flame.
Silver Threads, Still Walking, Still Waking is co-hosted by me, Carla Bergman.
And me, Eleanor Goldfield. This is where we interview long-term organizers and radicals about their watershed moments, what they've learned along the way, and how they maintain their hope on this path, dreaming and building emergent worlds for a present and future anchored in justice and freedom for all.
Because there are forks in the road, but they all lead us home, to the fight, to the build.